The chamber was older than human civilization itself. Its walls stretched upward into darkness, covered in symbols from 47 different species. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood in the center of the circular floor, feeling very small. Around her, in rising tiers that seemed to touch the sky, sat the representatives of the Galactic Council. She had been standing there for 6 hours. "The human species has been part of this council for 300 years, said Speaker Julnar, his 3 eyes blinking in sequence. The Thalrion was ancient, even by the standards of his long-lived species. His skin had turned the deep purple that marked 5,000 years of life. 300 years is nothing, a blink. Yet in this blink you have disrupted everything." Elena kept her face calm, though her heart was racing. Behind her stood Admiral Marcus Chen, the head of Earth's defense forces. His uniform was crisp and perfect, but she could feel the tension radiating from him. "Speaker, we have followed every law," Elena said. Her voice carried through the chamber without need for amplification. The acoustics here were perfect, designed by the mysterious architects who built this place millions of years ago. "We have honored every treaty. What disruption do you speak of?" A ripple of sound moved through the assembled aliens. Some laughed. Others made sounds that might have been anger or fear. Elena couldn't always tell the difference. "You solve problems," said Council Member Vexith, a being that looked like flowing water held in the shape of a person. "Problems that should take thousands of years to solve. You do it in decades. This is not natural." "You adapt," added another voice, this one from a crystalline creature that sang its words. "You change. You take our technology and make it better. You take our culture and blend it with yours. You spread like a virus." Elena felt Marcus shift behind her. She knew he wanted to speak, to defend humanity. But this was her role. She was the diplomat. "Is it a crime to learn?" she asked. "Is it a crime to grow?" "It is dangerous," Speaker Julnar said simply. "In 300 years, your technology has matched species who have been in space for 10,000 years. Your influence spreads across 70 systems. You broker trade deals that change economies. You propose social reforms that shake governments. You are too much, too fast." "We are what we are," Elena said. "We cannot pretend to be less than we are." "No," agreed the speaker. His voice was sad, almost apologetic. "You cannot, and that is why we must do this." A hologram appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed the galaxy slowly rotating. The core was bright with civilized systems, marked in various colors. Far out on one spiral arm, colored in red, was human space. "The vote has been taken," Julnar continued. 41 species voted yes. 6 voted no. Humanity is hereby exiled from council space. The word hit Elena like a physical blow. "Exiled? You will be relocated to the Perseus Arm," the speaker said, and the hologram zoomed to show a dark region of space far from the galactic center. "It is beyond our mapped territory. You will have room to grow there, at your own pace, without disturbing the balance we have maintained for eons." "That region is unexplored," Marcus said, speaking for the first time. His voice was hard. "It could be empty. It could be hostile. You're sending 40 billion humans into the unknown. You are adaptable," Vexith said, and there was something cruel in its flowing voice. "You will survive." Elena's mind raced. "How long do we have?" 10 years to withdraw all human presence from council space, Julnar said. "All colonies must be abandoned. All trade agreements are void. All diplomatic relationships are severed. In 10 years, a barrier will be erected around the Perseus Arm. It will be permanent." "A prison," Marcus said flatly. "A reservation," the speaker corrected. "For your protection and ours." Elena looked up at the 47 representatives. Some wouldn't meet her eyes. Others stared at her with fear or satisfaction or pity. She realized then that this decision had been made long before today. The trial had been a formality. "History will judge this decision," she said quietly. "History," said Julnar, "is written by those who survive long enough to write it. We have survived for millions of years. We will continue. And someday perhaps your descendants will understand why this was necessary." The chamber began to empty. Representatives floated, walked, or teleported away. Within minutes, only Elena and Marcus remained, standing in the ancient space. "We should have seen this coming," Marcus said. "Maybe," Elena replied, "or maybe it wouldn't have mattered. They were always going to be afraid of us." The next 10 years moved with terrible speed. Earth's government mobilized every resource. 40 billion people needed to be moved. Colonies that humans had built on 17 worlds had to be abandoned. Ships needed to be constructed, generation ships that could carry millions in suspended animation. Elena watched from Earth as the great exodus began. Massive vessels, each one a city unto itself, lifted from planets across human space. Some people went willingly, angry at the Council's decision, eager to build something new. Others went reluctantly, leaving homes they had known for generations. The Council watched too. Their ships patrolled the borders of human space, making sure the exodus stayed on schedule. They were not cruel about it, but they were firm. When one human colony asked for more time, the Council refused. Rules were rules. Marcus oversaw the military aspects. Every weapon, every ship, every piece of military technology had to be moved. The Council wanted no human presence left behind. As he worked, he thought about war. They could fight. Earth's fleets were strong and human soldiers were skilled. But they would lose. The Council had 47 species, thousands of years of weapons development, and billions of soldiers. Humanity would be crushed. It's not about winning a war, Elena told him one night as they shared a drink in her office. Outside the window, another generation ship lifted into the sky, its engines lighting up the night. It's about surviving long enough to prove them wrong. And if we can't survive out there? Marcus asked. Then we were never as great as we thought we were, she said simply. In year 9 of the Exodus, Elena visited the last human colony to be evacuated. It was on a world called New Seattle, a rainy planet where humans had built beautiful cities among towering trees. 10 million people had lived there. Now it was empty. She walked through the abandoned streets. Rain fell softly. The buildings were intact but lifeless. Parks where children had played were silent. The colony's mayor, a woman named Sarah Kim, walked beside her. "We built something good here," Sarah said, "and now it's just gone." "Not gone," Elena said. "You'll build something good again, will we?" Sarah asked. "Out there in the dark? With no help, no trade, no allies?" Elena didn't have an answer. The final day came. The last human ship carrying Elena, Marcus, and the remnants of Earth's government prepared to pass through the barrier. The Council had finished their work. A massive wall of energy now surrounded the Perseus arm, visible as a shimmering curtain in space. On the bridge of the flagship Unity, Elena watched the barrier approach. Behind them, Council ships maintained a respectful distance. They were here to witness, to make sure humanity truly left. "All ships report ready," Marcus said from his station. 2,342 vessels, 40 billion people in various states of suspension. All our technology, all our art, all our knowledge, everything we are, heading into the unknown. "Then let's go," Elena said. The Unity moved forward. The barrier approached, filling the view screen with blue-white light. Elena felt a strange tingling as they passed through. For a moment, everything went silent. The hum of the engines disappeared. The beeping of the instrument stopped. Even the sound of her own heartbeat seemed to fade. Then they were through. Behind them, the barrier solidified. Elena turned to look at the screen showing their rear view. The galaxy they had known, the Council space that had been humanity's home for 300 years, was now on the other side of an impenetrable wall. "We're receiving a final transmission from the Council," said the communications officer. "Play it," Elena said. Speaker Julnar's face appeared on the screen. He looked older than he had at the trial, more tired. "Ambassador Vasquez," he said, "I want you to know that I take no joy in this. But it is necessary. Your species is young and has much to learn. Perhaps in 10,000 years or so, you will understand the importance of stability, of moving slowly, of respecting the wisdom of age. Until then, may you find what you need in the Perseus arm. This is our final communication. Goodbye." The screen went dark. "Should we respond?" the communications officer asked. Elena thought about it. She thought about everything she wanted to say. About injustice, about fear masquerading as wisdom, about potential being punished before it could become achievement. But in the end, she just shook her head. "No," she said. "We'll respond with what we build out here. That will be answer enough." Marcus stood and looked at the forward screen. It showed the Perseus arm stretching before them. Millions of stars in the darkness. Unexplored. Unmapped. Full of danger and possibility. "All ships," he transmitted on the fleet-wide channel. "This is Admiral Chen. We have passed through the barrier. We are now beyond council space. We are alone. He paused, then continued. And we are free. Set course for the nearest star cluster. Let's find a home. The fleet moved forward, engines burning bright against the dark. 2,000 ships carrying humanity's future. Behind them, the barrier glowed, a wall between humanity and everything they had known. Elena remained on the bridge watching the stars. Somewhere in this darkness was their future. They would build. They would grow. And someday, somehow, they would prove the council wrong. She just hoped it wouldn't take 10,000 years. But even as that thought crossed her mind, sensors began to pick up something strange. Ahead of them, scattered among the stars of the Perseus arm, were structures. Ruins. Ancient beyond measure, but clearly artificial. What is that? Marcus asked, pointing at the readings. The science officer studied the data, her eyes widening. It's technology. Old technology. Really old. Nothing like what the council uses. Elena leaned forward. How old? If these readings are right? The officer looked up, disbelief on her face. Millions of years. These structures are from the architects. Marcus and Elena exchanged glances. The architects were legends. The mysterious race that had built the council chambers, the barriers and other wonders throughout the galaxy. No one knew what had happened to them. They had simply vanished, leaving only ruins and technology no one could fully understand, and humanity had just been exiled into their backyard. Change of plans, Elena said, a smile slowly forming on her face. Set course for the nearest structure. Let's see what the architects left behind. As the Unity turned toward the ancient ruins, Elena felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. The council had exiled humanity out of fear of what they might become. They had thrown humanity into the dark, expecting them to struggle and fail. But they had also thrown humanity into a treasure trove of ancient knowledge. And if there was one thing humans excelled at, it was learning from those who came before. The Perseus arm waited, and humanity was ready to explore. The first structure they found was dead. That was the word Dr. Sarah Kim used when she returned from the initial survey. Dead. Not destroyed, not abandoned. Dead as if it had once been alive. 50 years had passed since humanity crossed the barrier. Sarah was the granddaughter of the mayor who had evacuated New Seattle. She had been born on the generation ship Columbia, spent her childhood in cryosleep, and woken up to become humanity's leading expert on architect technology. She was 32 years old, and she had seen things that would have amazed the greatest scientists of the old council space. The structure responds to consciousness, she explained to the assembled council of ship captains. They met in person now when they could. Virtual meetings felt too much like the old days, too much like the council they had left behind. It's not mechanical. It's biological-mechanical hybrid, or maybe something else entirely. Our language doesn't have words for what this is. Can we learn from it? Asked Captain David Chen, Marcus's grandson. He commanded the Unity now. Marcus had died 5 years ago, peacefully in his sleep after seeing humanity establish its first permanent colony on a world they called New Hope. We already are, Sarah said. She activated a hologram showing the structure. It was enormous, a sphere 10 kilometers across, floating in space between two stars. Its surface was covered in patterns that seemed to shift and change. We've extracted data crystals from the inner chambers. Thousands of them. Each one contains more information than our entire pre-exile database. What kind of information? Asked Ambassador Elena Vasquez. She was old now. Her hair completely white, her face lined with years of hard decisions, but her eyes were still sharp. Everything, Sarah said simply. Mathematics, physics, biology, and something else. Something that looks like instructions for manipulating time. The room went silent. Time travel? Someone asked. Maybe. Or maybe something more fundamental. Sarah pulled up another image, this one showing complex equations that hurt to look at. The architects didn't just study time. They studied how to anchor things in time, how to make something exist across multiple time periods simultaneously. Elena leaned forward. Could we do that? Not yet, Sarah admitted. We barely understand a fraction of what we're seeing. But given another 100 years? Maybe. That became the pattern. Humanity would find an architect structure, study it, extract what knowledge they could, and move on. The Perseus arm was full of these ruins. Some were small, barely larger than a house. Others were planetary in scale. spheres that had once orbited stars but now drifted alone in space. The ruins were not the only challenge. The Perseus arm was harsh. Resources were scarce. Many star systems had planets, but few were suitable for human life. The first colony, New Hope, had been easy because the planet was Earth-like. But there were only 3 such worlds in 100 light years. Humanity adapted. They always did. Terraforming had been considered too dangerous by the Council. It required massive energy expenditure, planet-scale engineering, and the risk of accidentally creating something worse than what you started with. The Council preferred slow, careful expansion, taking centuries to modify a world. Humanity had 10 systems that needed colonizing and a century to do it. Dr. James Okonkwo led the terraforming initiative. He was a 4th-generation ship child, born in space, and he had no patience for slow and careful. His team developed techniques that would have horrified the Council. They used nuclear charges to jumpstart volcanic activity. They crashed ice asteroids into dry worlds to create oceans. They seeded atmospheres with engineered bacteria that could survive in conditions that would kill any natural life. "We're playing God," one of his assistants said nervously, watching as they prepared to detonate charges that would crack open a planet's mantle. "No," James corrected. "Gods create from nothing. We're just aggressive gardeners." It worked. 70% of the time it worked. The other 30%, they learned valuable lessons about what not to do. Within 100 years, humanity had established colonies on 89 worlds. None were as nice as Earth had been. Most required environmental suits for surface work. But they were homes, and humanity spread across the Perseus arm like seeds finding fertile ground. The generation ships became something new. They were too valuable to land, too expensive to build again. Instead, they became mobile cities and research stations. The Unity itself housed 10 million people and orbited New Hope, serving as the capital of what was becoming the human dominion. That name emerged naturally. No one declared it officially. People just started using it. The human dominion. It felt right. They were no longer refugees. They were builders. Sarah Kim made her breakthrough in year 143. She had spent her entire adult life studying architect technology. She was 70 now, kept alive by medical advances that humanity had developed in their isolation. The Council had restricted many medical technologies as too dangerous. Without those restrictions, human lifespans had quietly doubled. She was in her laboratory on the Unity when she finally decoded a complete architect data crystal. The information flooded into her consciousness, because that was the only way to interface with architect technology, through direct neural connection. What she saw changed everything. The architects hadn't died. They hadn't been destroyed by war or plague or cosmic disaster. They had transcended. They had learned how to separate consciousness from physical form, how to exist as pure information, spread across time and space, and they had done it because they knew the universe was going to end. Sarah brought her findings to the Dominion Council. Elena was still there. Now over 150 years old, kept alive by both medical technology and, Sarah suspected, sheer stubbornness. "The heat death of the universe," Sarah explained. "Trillions of years in the future, but the architects could see it coming. They couldn't stop it. No one can. But they could survive beyond it, by becoming something that doesn't need physical existence." "Why didn't they tell anyone?" asked David Chen, now an admiral like his grandfather. "Why not share this with the other species?" "I think they tried," Sarah said. "But species that exist in normal time can't comprehend what they became. It's like trying to explain color to someone who can only see in black and white. The experience doesn't translate." "So they left instructions," Elena said, understanding dawning in her eyes. "These ruins, these crystals, they're a message to whoever comes next, a path to follow." "Yes," Sarah confirmed, "and we're the first species to get this far. The Council is too afraid of rapid advancement. They move too slowly to understand architect technology, but we're not afraid. We're desperate, and that makes all the difference." The Dominion Council debated for months. The question was fundamental. Should humanity try to follow the architect's path? Should they attempt to transcend physical existence? The debate split humanity. Some saw it as the ultimate goal, a way to ensure human survival beyond any possible disaster. Others saw it as abandoning what made them human in the first place. Elena broke the deadlock with a simple question. Why not both? The Quantum Consciousness Project began in year 160. Dr. Li Wei, a brilliant neurologist who had been born on New Hope, led the initiative. His goal wasn't to abandon physical existence, but to expand it. We copy consciousness, he explained. We create quantum duplicates that can exist in computer systems, while the original remains in a biological body. When the body dies, the consciousness continues. Memories, personality, everything that makes someone themselves preserved. The first volunteer was Admiral David Chen. He was 80 years old, still sharp, but he knew he was approaching the end. If the process failed, he would die. If it succeeded, he would become the first human to exist beyond death. It succeeded. The copy of David Chen that emerged in the quantum computer network was identical to the original. Same memories, same personality, same voice. He could see through sensors, speak through speakers, control machines with thought. When the original David Chen died 5 years later, peacefully in his sleep like his grandfather before him, his quantum self remained. "I'm still me," the quantum David Chen reported. "I remember dying. I remember being in the body when it stopped, but I also remember waking up here, in this system. I exist in both places. I am both David's, and I'm somehow more than both." Within 50 years, quantum consciousness became standard. When someone died, their consciousness could continue if they chose. Not everyone made that choice. Some preferred to end with their bodies. But enough did that. A new layer of human civilization emerged. The quantum citizens, they were called. Minds without bodies, living in the networks, guiding the ships, running the cities. They were still human. They still laughed, argued, created art, and told stories. They just did it without needing to breathe. Sarah Kim never underwent the process. She remained physical until the end, studying the architects with a body grown old. On her deathbed, at the age of 208, she made one final discovery. "I know what we need to do," she told Elena, who was even older but still refused to die. The architects didn't just transcend, they anchored themselves. They made it so they existed across all time simultaneously, past, present, future. They became permanent, not eternal. That suggests lasting forever in time. They became atemporal, outside of time. "Can we do that?" Elena asked. "Not yet," Sarah said, her voice weak. "But my notes are complete. Give it another 100 years, maybe 2. Someone will figure it out." She died that night. Her consciousness had been copied, but the original Sarah Kim was gone. The quantum Sarah continued her work, but she always said it wasn't quite the same. The breakthrough came in year 243. Dr. Elena Chen Vasquez III, great-granddaughter of both Elena Vasquez and Marcus Chen, was a quantum consciousness who had never had a biological body. She had been born directly into the network, created from the merged genetic patterns of her ancestors. She looked at Sarah's notes with fresh eyes that had never known physical limitation. And she saw what biological humans had missed. "We've been thinking about this wrong," she announced. "We don't need to transcend, we need to persist." The architects made themselves exist across all time by creating structures that anchor consciousness to specific points in space-time. Structures that once created have always existed and will always exist. The Dominion Council struggled to understand. "Think of it like this," Elena III explained. "Imagine you write a book. Once it's written, that book exists. Now imagine you write a book that, when finished, retroactively places copies of itself throughout all of history. Every library that ever existed suddenly has a copy, because from the universe's perspective, the book has always been there." "That's paradox," someone objected. "No," Elena III said. "That's the architect's gift. They learned how to create things that stabilize their own past existence. Temporal anchors, objects that once activated become permanent fixtures of reality itself. They called them eternity nodes. The first prototype was small, barely the size of a fist. It contained a simple message. Humanity was here. When activated, it did nothing visible, but every sensor in the system screamed that something had changed. "It's spreading backward in time," Elena III said, reading the data with shock. The node's temporal signature is appearing in our old data. Yesterday's sensor logs now show it was here. Last month's surveys detect it. It's writing itself into history. How far back? Someone asked. I don't know. Maybe forever. Maybe just to the moment it was created. Time is flexible around it. They tested it. They sent drones back to systems they had surveyed 200 years ago. Every one of them found an eternity node floating in space, weathered and old, as if it had been there all along. This is it, Elena III said. This is how the architects survived. They created billions of these nodes. Nodes containing their knowledge, their consciousness, their entire civilization. Nodes that exist everywhere and everywhen. You can't destroy what has always existed and will always exist. The Dominion Council saw the implications immediately. If we do this, Admiral Chen II said, a quantum consciousness who had been the original David Chen's son, if we build enough of these nodes and fill them with human knowledge and consciousness, we become permanent. The Council could destroy every human body, every human ship, every human world, but they couldn't erase us from existence. We would remain. In the nodes, in history, in time itself. It sounds like God, someone said nervously. It sounds like survival, Elena Vasquez countered. She was still alive, incredibly, over 300 years old, kept alive by technology and sheer will. The Council exiled us because they feared what we might become. Let's show them. Let's become something that time itself can't erase. The vote was unanimous. Construction began on the Chrono Lattice, a network of billions of eternity nodes that would span the entire human dominion. Each node would contain the complete knowledge and history of humanity. Each would host quantum consciousnesses. Each would be a library, a beacon, and a seed for future growth. It would take centuries to complete. But humanity had time. They had learned patience in the Perseus arm. They had learned that true strength wasn't in weapons or fleets. It was in persistence, in refusing to be erased. As construction ships spread across the Dominion, beginning the great work, Elena Vasquez stood on New Hope and looked up at the sky. 400 stars now held human colonies. Tens of billions of people lived in the Perseus arm. They had built a civilization from nothing, and now they were building something even greater, something that would last forever. She smiled. The Council thought they were punishing us, she said to herself. They gave us the greatest gift instead. They gave us isolation, room to grow, freedom to become what they feared. And now we'll be something they can't even imagine. High above, the first eternity node activated. Its light spread backward through time, forward into the future, anchoring humanity to the cosmos itself. The Dominion had begun. The chronolattice grew slowly like a crystal forming in deep time. 500 years after the first eternity node activated, humanity had placed nodes in every system they controlled. 400 star systems, 89 terraformed worlds, 300 space stations, and billions upon billions of nodes, each one a seed of permanence planted in the fabric of space-time itself. Dr. Marcus Liu stood inside the core chamber of Node Complex 7, feeling the hum of temporal energy through his bones. He wasn't entirely sure he had bones anymore. He existed as both quantum consciousness and biological form, switching between them as needed. The biological body was useful for certain types of work. The quantum form was better for understanding what they had built. We're ready for full activation, he reported to the Dominion Council. The council met in hybrid now. Some members biological, some quantum, some like Marcus, who were both. All nodes are synchronized. The lattice is complete. What will happen when we activate it? Asked Counselor Sarah Park, a biological human who looked 30 but was actually 90. Medicine had become very good. If our calculations are correct, Marcus said, the lattice will become permanent. Every node across all 400 systems will anchor itself not just to now but to all time. The human dominion will become a fixed point in history. And if your calculations are wrong? Asked Counselor James, a quantum consciousness who appeared as a floating pattern of light. Marcus smiled. Then nothing happens and we try again. That wasn't entirely true. If they were very wrong, they could create a temporal paradox that would erase themselves from existence. But Marcus saw no reason to worry people with details. The activation was scheduled for the anniversary of humanity's exile, year 1253 since passing through the barrier. Some people called it ironic. Marcus called it poetic. Elena Chen Vasquez IV served as the temporal shepherd for the activation. She was Marcus's contemporary, another quantum biological hybrid, and she had spent her entire life preparing for this role. The temporal shepherds were a new development. Humans who could perceive time in non-linear ways, who could exist consciously across multiple time periods simultaneously. Elena IV was the first successful shepherd. The process had driven 3 candidates insane before they figured out how to do it safely. "I can see the moment," she reported. Her consciousness spread across the past, present, and future like a net. "I can see us activating the lattice. I can see it working. I can see the nodes writing themselves into history. It's beautiful. Can you see any problems?" Marcus asked. "Yes," Elena said. "The Council is going to notice. Of course they would. The Galactic Council might be cautious and slow, but they weren't stupid. A temporal distortion the size of the human dominion would show up on their sensors. The question was, would they do anything about it?" The activation began at exactly midnight, New Hope Standard Time. 400 systems, billions of nodes, all activating simultaneously. The energy required was enormous. Every fusion reactor in the Dominion ran at maximum capacity. Every solar collector focused its output. For 3.7 seconds, the human Dominion used more energy than a small star, and then the lattice came online. Marcus watched from multiple time perspectives at once. His consciousness split between biological sight and quantum perception. He saw the moment from now, from yesterday, from tomorrow. He saw the nodes light up like stars. He saw their temporal anchors spread backward through time, carving permanent channels in space-time itself. He saw history rewrite, not in big ways. The past didn't change. Earth still existed. The exile still happened. But now, woven through all of it were the eternity nodes. They had always been there. Survey crews from 200 years ago found them. Explorers from 500 years ago detected their signals. Archaeologists digging on Earth found nodes buried in ancient strata, nodes that looked billions of years old but contained distinctly human technology. It was paradox. It was impossible. It was real. "The lattice is stable," Elena IV reported. Her voice came from everywhere and nowhere, echoed across time. "We are anchored. I can feel it. We exist in all time simultaneously. We are permanent." A cheer went up from the assembled council, from crowds watching on every human world, from consciousness nodes throughout the network. Humanity had done it. They had made themselves impossible to erase. Marcus felt tears on his biological face. He hadn't expected to cry. "Ambassador Vasquez should have lived to see this," he said quietly. "She did," Elena IV said gently. "I can see her." "In the past. She knew we would succeed." She's smiling. The first test came 3 days later. They found an eternity node on Earth itself, the Earth they had left behind on the other side of the barrier. The node was buried under what had been London, placed there according to temporal dating, before humans had even evolved. "It's been there for 3 million years, the researcher reported, confusion evident in her voice. "But it contains our data, current data, information about the lattice activation." "How is that possible?" "Because time isn't linear anymore," Marcus explained. "Not for the nodes. They exist in superposition across all time periods. When we activated the lattice, we seeded nodes throughout history, including on Earth, including before humanity existed. That's a paradox. That's permanence. The implications took years to fully understand. The lattice didn't just make humanity hard to kill. It made human knowledge, human culture, and human consciousness accessible across time. A shepherd could access any node at any point in history and retrieve information. They could observe the past not by traveling there but by reading the records that had always been there. They discovered that the architects had done the same thing. The ruins scattered through the Perseus arm weren't just old. They were temporally anchored, just like the eternity nodes. The architects had built their own lattice, billions of years ago, and it still existed, spread across time and space. "They left us a message," Elena IV said, after spending months exploring the temporal layers of an architect structure. "It's encoded in the deepest layers of their nodes. They knew someone would eventually follow their path." "What does it say?" Marcus asked. Elena the Fourth's eyes, she was in biological form at the moment, were distant, looking at something far away or long ago. Beware the silence at the end of time. Beware the final moment. Prepare, build, survive. And when the universe ends, remember us. A chill ran through the assembled council. The heat death, someone whispered. They knew it was coming. Not just knew, Elena the Fourth corrected. They saw it. They went far enough forward in time to witness the end of everything. And it scared them enough to become what they became. How long do we have? Asked Counselor Park. Trillions of years, Marcus said. But if we're going to follow the architect's path, we need to start preparing now. Building more than just the lattice. Building something that can survive beyond the universe itself. The Eternity Project was born from that meeting. Its goal was simple to state, impossibly complex to achieve. Ensure that the achievements of all sapient life survived the heat death of the universe. Not just humanity, not just the architects, everyone. Everything, every thought, every creation, every moment of beauty or meaning or love. They would build an archive, the greatest archive ever conceived. It would exist outside of normal time, anchored in the eternal moment before the universe began and the eternal moment after it ended. It would contain everything. But that was work for the future. For now, humanity had achieved something remarkable. They had made themselves permanent. The human temporal dominion, as it was now officially called, spanned 400 star systems. Its population was difficult to count because it included both biological humans and quantum consciousnesses, and some people were both. The best estimate was around 80 billion biological humans and over 200 billion quantum consciousnesses. They had built a post-scarcity civilization. Energy was abundant from fusion and stellar collectors. Matter was plentiful from asteroid mining. Information flowed freely through the lattice. There was no poverty, no hunger, no need for anyone to suffer. But they were not soft. The Dominion maintained a powerful fleet. They explored aggressively. They built continually. They knew that somewhere beyond the barrier the Galactic Council still existed. And they knew that someday, somehow, the Council would discover what humanity had become. That day came sooner than expected. Year 1347 since exile. Admiral David Chen V, a direct descendant through both biological and quantum lineage of the original David Chen, was commanding a survey mission near the barrier. His ship, the Persistence, was studying temporal anomalies when sensors detected something impossible. Contact, his sensor officer reported. It's a Council probe. On our side of the barrier. David studied the readings. The probe was definitely Council technology, specifically Thalrion design. It was damaged, drifting, but still active. How did it get through the barrier? Unknown, sir. But it's been here a while, at least 50 years based on wear patterns. Retrieve it. I want to know what it saw. The probe's data was partially corrupted, but they recovered enough. It had passed through a weak point in the barrier, caused by gravitational stress from a nearby binary star system. It had spent decades surveying the human dominion from the edges, recording everything. And then 3 days ago it had transmitted a burst package back through the barrier. They know, David said quietly. The Council knows we're here. They know what we've built. He reported to the Dominion Council immediately. The response was calm. They had always known this moment would come. Let them know, said Counselor Marcus Liu, now over 200 years old and still refusing to go fully quantum. We're not the refugees they exiled. We're not the species they feared. We're something new. Something they can't understand. Let them come and see, but the Council didn't come. Not yet. Instead, their surveillance increased. More probes found the weak points in the barrier. They watched. They recorded. They reported back to Council space. The Dominion watched back. Through the lattice, temporal shepherds could observe Council space, reading the echoes of events from eternity nodes that had, paradoxically, always existed even in Council territory. They're afraid, reported Shepherd Elena the Fourth. She had been a shepherd for 300 years now, her consciousness so spread across time that she barely remembered what it was like to experience moments sequentially. But they're also curious. And some of them feel guilty. Guilty? Marcus asked. The exile, Elena explained. Some Council species now see it as a mistake. They're arguing internally. Some want to make contact. Others want to reinforce the barrier. A few are proposing military action. Against us? David V asked, laughing. We're temporally anchored. They can't destroy us without destroying themselves. We exist in their past now. Try to erase us and they create a paradox that could unmake their entire civilization. They don't fully understand that yet, Elena warned. Be patient. They will. The Dominion continued to grow. They pushed further into the Perseus Arm, finding more architect ruins, building more nodes, expanding the lattice. By year 1500 after exile, they controlled 600 star systems, and then they made a discovery that changed everything. A science team led by Dr. Amanda Okonkwo, descended from the original terraforming pioneer, found an architect structure unlike any other. It was small, barely larger than a house, but its temporal signature was enormous. It existed simultaneously across millions of time periods. It's a message, Amanda reported, her voice shaking. A real-time message. From the architects. From after they transcended. The message was simple but profound. You follow our path, good. You are not the first. You will not be the last. But you are brave. The Council fears change. They fear growth. They will always fear what you become. Do not let their fear limit you. Build, grow, prepare. The end comes for all universes, but knowledge can survive. Consciousness can persist. You have begun the work. Finish it. And when you reach the end of time, you will find us waiting. The Dominion Council read the message in silence. They're still there, Marcus finally said. Somewhere, somewhen, the architects still exist. And they're expecting us to join them, added Counselor Park. Not expecting, Elena the Fourth corrected. From their perspective, we already have. Time is non-linear to them. They exist in the eternal moment. When we complete the Eternity Project, when we build the archive that survives the end of the universe, we will have always been there with them. It was dizzying to contemplate, but also strangely comforting. They weren't alone on this path. The architects had walked it before, and they were waiting at the end. The Dominion redoubled its efforts. The chrono lattice continued to expand. More nodes were built. More systems were explored. The Eternity Project moved from theoretical to practical, with construction beginning on archive structures that existed partially outside of normal space-time. And through it all, the Council watched from beyond the barrier. Watched and feared and wondered what they had created by exiling humanity all those centuries ago. History will judge this decision, Ambassador Elena Vasquez had said at the trial, over 1,000 years in the past. Now spread across time through the eternity nodes, her words echoed through the ages. The Dominion remembered. The lattice remembered. The universe itself remembered, because the nodes had made it permanent. The Council had exiled humanity out of fear. They had thrown humanity into the dark and expected them to struggle and fade. Instead, humanity had built something that time itself could not erase. And they were just getting started. The Galactic Council was not what it had been. 1,000 years had passed since humanity's exile, and time had not been kind to the careful order the elder species had maintained. Counselor Takara of the Velshara walked through the ancient chamber where humanity had been judged. She was young by her species standards, only 300 years old, but she had studied history deeply. Her people had voted against the exile. They had been one of only 6 species who saw it as wrong. She touched the spot where Ambassador Elena Vasquez had stood. The stone was smooth, worn by time, and countless other hands doing the same thing. The exile had become a controversial moment in galactic history. Some saw it as necessary caution. Others saw it as their greatest shame. Counselor Takara, said a voice behind her. She turned to see Speaker Julnar VII. The Thalrion were long-lived, but even they eventually died. This Julnar was the 7th to hold the position since the original speaker. He had purple skin like his ancestor, but his eyes were different. They held doubt, Speaker, she acknowledged. I was just thinking about the humans. Many of us are, he said, joining her. The archaeological expedition returned today. You should see what they found. The expedition had been exploring a region of space where, according to very old records, the architects had once built their greatest works. Most were ruins now, studied countless times over the millennia, but this team had found something new, or rather something that had somehow been missed for millions of years. The briefing room was crowded. Representatives from all 47 council species were present, either in person or by hologram. The tension was palpable. We found this, said the lead archaeologist, a crystalline being named Seer. The hologram showed a structure floating in space, a perfect sphere covered in geometric patterns. It's an architect data repository, one we've never seen before. How is that possible? Demanded Counselor Vexith, the water being whose ancestor had condemned humanity. We've surveyed that region 100 times. The structure has temporal shielding, Seer explained. It only becomes visible at certain times. We happened to be there during a window. What did you find inside? Takara asked. Seer's crystalline form darkened, a sign of distress, a warning. The architects left a message specifically for council species. It says, "Beware those you exile, for isolation breeds gods." The room erupted in noise. Voices talking over each other, demanding explanations, expressing disbelief. There's more, Seer continued, waiting for silence. The structure contained predictions. Models of civilization development. According to the architects, any sufficiently advanced species that is isolated and given access to architect technology will eventually transcend normal existence. They will become temporally anchored, permanent, impossible to remove. Like the architects themselves, Takara said quietly. Exactly like the architects, Seer confirmed. The message warns us not to exile species into regions rich with architect ruins, because that's how new architects are made. The implication was clear to everyone in the room. The Perseus arm where humanity had been exiled was filled with architect structures. The humans, someone whispered. What have they become? Speaker Zulnar stood. We need to know. We need to send a delegation to the barrier and attempt contact. If the humans have indeed become like the architects, we must understand what that means. Not everyone agreed. The debate raged for days. Some species insisted the barrier should be reinforced, made stronger, that humanity should be contained forever. Others argued that if the humans had truly become temporally anchored, containment was impossible. Takara led the faction pushing for contact. She was young, energetic, and believed deeply that the exile had been a mistake. We cannot hide from our choices forever, she argued. We exiled them out of fear. If they have become something powerful, that is our doing. We must face it. The vote was close, but contact won, barely. The delegation was small, just 5 ships, representatives from each of the species that had voted against exile originally. Takara commanded the flagship, a fast diplomatic vessel called the Bridge Builder. They approached the barrier 2 months later. It was still there, still glowing with ancient power, still impenetrable, or so they thought. We're detecting unusual readings, reported Takara's science officer. The barrier is defluctuating. There are weak points, lots of them. More than before. Natural degradation? Takara asked. No, something is affecting it from the inside. The barrier is being pushed against repeatedly, systematically. They're testing it, Takara realized. The humans are looking for ways through. She composed a message, broadcasting it on all frequencies toward the barrier. This is Counselor Takara of the Velshara, representing the Galactic Council. We come in peace, seeking dialogue. Will you speak with us? For 3 days there was no response. Takara began to think they had failed. Then on the 4th day, something happened that would be remembered for the rest of galactic history. Every sensor on every ship screamed alerts simultaneously. Space itself rippled, and standing on the bridge of the Bridge Builder, where no one had been a moment before, was a human. Takara's security team drew weapons, but she waved them down. The human looked young, perhaps 20 in their terms, with dark skin and eyes that seemed to see through time itself. She wore simple clothing and smiled gently. I am Shepherd Elena Chen Vasquez the Ninth, the human said. I am a temporal shepherd of the human dominion. I exist across multiple time periods simultaneously. I have always been here, in this conversation. I will always be here, and I am pleased to finally make formal contact. How did you get through our shields? Takara asked, trying to keep her voice steady. I didn't, Elena the Ninth said. I've been on this ship since it was built. You just didn't notice me until now. Takara's science officer checked the logs. His face went pale. She's right. There are temporal signatures throughout the ship. They've been there since construction. We never noticed because they were perfectly synchronized with normal space-time. We have eternity nodes throughout Council space, Elena the Ninth explained. Billions of them. They've always been there. You've just never been able to detect them because they exist in temporal superposition. We're not invading, We've always been here. You just didn't know it. That's impossible, breathed Takara. No, Elena the Ninth said gently. That's what the architects became. And now it's what we are. We are permanent. We are anchored in time. You cannot remove us because we exist in your past. We are woven into the fabric of history itself. She touched the air and a hologram appeared. It showed the galaxy, but with an overlay that made Takara's head hurt to look at. Billions of points of light scattered throughout all of council space and beyond. These are our nodes, Elena the Ninth explained. Each one contains human consciousness, human knowledge, human culture. Each one exists across all time periods. When we activated our chrono lattice 300 years ago, it wrote itself backward through history. We have been here observing and recording since before your species even evolved. Why? Takara asked. Why hide? Why not make contact? Because you exiled us, Elena said simply. You made it clear you didn't want us, so we stayed hidden and focused on our own development. But we never stopped watching. We've observed council space for 1,000 years. We've watched your wars, your peace treaties, your cultural evolution. We've recorded all of it in our nodes. That's espionage. That's history, Elena corrected. We preserve. We don't interfere. We've never influenced a council decision. We've never revealed ourselves until now. We just watch and remember. Takara felt the weight of history pressing down on her. But you have interfered. Haven't you? Things that seemed lucky. Disasters that were narrowly avoided. Peace treaties that succeeded against all odds. Elena the Ninth smiled sadly. Maybe, maybe not. Time is complicated when you exist across all of it. A shepherd might see a disaster coming and place a warning anonymously in someone's path. Is that interference? Or is it just kindness? You saved people, Takara said, understanding dawning. Council people. Even though we exiled you, you've been protecting us. We're human, Elena said. We can't help it. We see someone suffering and we want to help. We see a civilization on the brink of collapse and we nudge things just slightly toward survival. We've done it hundreds of times. Thousands, maybe. Small things. Anonymous things. We never wanted credit. We just wanted to help. Takara sat down heavily. The council needs to know this. All of it. They will, Elena said. I'm appearing in 47 council chambers right now having the same conversation. Every species is learning the truth simultaneously. How many of you are there? Takara asked. How many humans? Biological humans? About 200 billion. Quantum consciousnesses? Over 1 trillion. Temporal shepherds who exist across multiple time periods? 3,000. We're not a species anymore. We're something new. Something that exists in ways council species can't easily comprehend. You've become like the architects. Yes, Elena admitted. But we're also still human. We still love, laugh, cry, and dream. We still make art and music and stories. We're just more spread out than we used to be. She pulled up another image. It showed human civilization in the Perseus arm. Thousands of star systems, massive structures, fleets of ships, and everywhere. The glowing points of eternity nodes. This is what you created when you exiled us, Elena said. You gave us isolation and freedom and access to architect technology. You gave us 1,000 years to grow without interference, and we used that time to become something you fear but also something you need. Need? Takara asked.
The universe is dying, Elena said softly.
Slowly over trillions of years, but dying. The architects knew. That's why they transcended. That's why they left us instructions. The heat death is coming, and when it does, every civilization, every achievement, every moment of beauty or meaning will be lost, unless someone preserves it. And you're preserving it? We're trying, Elena said. The Eternity Project. We're building an archive that will survive beyond the universe itself. A repository of all knowledge, all consciousness, all achievement. When the stars go dark and the last particle decays, the archive will remain, and inside it will be the story of every species that ever existed. Including council species, especially council species, Elena said. You exiled us, but you're still part of the story. We've been recording your history for 1,000 years. Every triumph, every tragedy, every moment of courage or kindness or creativity. When the universe ends, you will be remembered. We'll make sure of it. Takara felt tears forming. We were wrong. The exile was wrong. Yes, Elena said gently. But wrong choices can lead to unexpected places. You exiled us out of fear. That fear drove us to become something greater than we might have otherwise. In a strange way, you gave us a gift. What happens now? Takara asked. Now, Elena said, you have a choice. The barrier is failing, not because we're attacking it, but because our temporal anchors exist on both sides. From the universe's perspective, the barrier is trying to separate something that exists as a unified whole. It can't hold much longer. And when it falls, we come back, Elena said. Not as conquerors, not as refugees, as equals, as partners. We want to share what we've learned. We want to help you prepare for what's coming, and we want to include you in the Eternity Project. Your history, your culture, your people, all of it preserved forever. Some species won't want that, Takara said. They'll see you as a threat. I know, Elena said. But they'll come around, or they won't. That's their choice. We're offering partnership, not demanding it. Those who want to join us can. Those who don't can retreat further into council space. We have room for both outcomes. She began to fade, her temporal presence moving to other times and places. Wait, Takara called out. One more question. The original humans who were exiled, Elena Vasquez, Marcus Chen, the others, do they still exist? In your nodes? Elena the Ninth smiled. Yes, quantum copies of their consciousnesses persist in the lattice. You could speak with them if you wanted. They've been watching this whole time, proud of what we've become. I would like that, Takara said. I would like to apologize. Then come visit, Elena said. The barrier will fall soon. When it does, come to New Hope, bring others. Let's start over, properly this time. She vanished, leaving Takara alone on her bridge with her stunned crew. Counselor, her science officer said shakily, I'm detecting temporal signatures everywhere. On every council world, every space station, every ship. They've been there all along. I know, Takara said. The humans have been with us for 1,000 years. We just didn't know it. She composed a message to send back to the council. It would be the most important message of her life. The humans have transcended, she reported. They have become temporally anchored like the architects before them. They exist throughout our space and have existed there since before we exiled them. This is not an invasion. This is a revelation. And we must decide. Do we accept them as partners, or do we retreat in fear as we did 1,000 years ago? The message sent, Takara turned her ship toward the barrier and waited. The barrier flickered and pulsed, fighting against forces it was never designed to resist. In 3 days it would fail completely. And then the real conversation would begin. The exile had ended. The age of partnership or conflict was about to start. The barrier fell on a Tuesday. That was the human calculation anyway. The Velshara measured time differently, and the Thalrion had 17 different calendar systems. But the human designation stuck because humans had a talent for making their systems feel natural too. Others, Counselor Takara watched, from the bridge builder as the ancient wall of energy, flickered one final time and dissolved into nothing. For 1,000 years it had separated humanity from the galaxy. Now it was simply gone as if it had never existed, which in a way was true. The Eternity nodes existed on both sides, and they had always existed. The barrier had been trying to separate past from future, cause from effect. Reality had simply stopped cooperating. We're receiving a transmission, her communications officer reported, from New Hope, the human capital world. Play it, Takara said. The screen filled with the image of an elderly woman. She looked about 80 in human years, with white hair and dark skin lined with age, but her eyes were young and sharp. I am Ambassador Elena Chen Vasquez the 22nd, the woman said, direct descendant of both Elena Vasquez and Marcus Chen, the first humans to stand before the council. On behalf of the human temporal dominion, I welcome you to the Perseus Arm. The way is open. Come in peace and you will be received in peace, Takara smiled. Prepare the delegation. We're going to New Hope. The journey took 3 days. Takara's small fleet was joined by 17 other council ships, representing species that had voted for contact. The other species, those who still feared what humanity had become, remained in council space watching and waiting. New Hope appeared on the view screens like a jewel. It was an Earth-like world, but distinctly different. 3 moons orbited it, and a massive ring system glittered in the sunlight. The planet glowed with cities connected by lights that formed patterns visible from space. But what took Takara's breath away were the structures in orbit. Thousands of them, ranging from small stations to megastructures that dwarfed any council engineering, and between them all, connecting everything, were the Eternity nodes. They pulsed with soft light, creating a web of temporal energy that made the entire system feel alive. "It's beautiful," Takara whispered. "It's impossible," her science officer corrected. "The energy requirements alone, and the temporal stability needed to keep all those nodes synchronized. Our models say this shouldn't be possible." "Our models," Takara said, "were clearly incomplete. They were guided to a landing platform on New Hope's largest orbital station. Ambassador Elena the 22nd met them personally, along with a delegation of humans in various forms. Some were biological, some were quantum projections. One was a temporal shepherd who existed partially in multiple time periods, her form flickering slightly as different versions of her moved through the same space. "Welcome," Elena said, embracing Takara in the traditional Velshara greeting. She knew it perfectly, had studied Takara's culture deeply. "Welcome to the Dominion. We've waited a long time for this moment." "Not as long as we've been here," said the shepherd, her voice echoing oddly. "From my perspective, this meeting already happened, is happening, and will always happen. Time is wonderfully complicated." Takara tried not to think too hard about that. The tour of New Hope took 2 days. Takara saw cities where biological and quantum citizens live side by side. She saw schools where children learned from teachers who had lived for centuries. She saw factories that produced matter from pure energy. She saw art galleries containing works from 1,000 years of human creativity, preserved in eternity nodes so they could never be lost. "We have about 200 billion biological citizens," Elena explained as they walked through a park filled with trees from Earth. "And over 1 trillion quantum consciousnesses. The quantum citizens do most of the work that requires being in multiple places at once or experiencing time non-linearly. Biological citizens focus on things that require physical presence and linear experience." "Do you have a preference?" Takara asked. "Between biological and quantum existence?" "I've been both," Elena said. "I started biological, uploaded to quantum when I was 90, then chose to download back into a biological body because I missed physical sensation. I'll probably go quantum again when this body wears out. It's just different forms of existence. Neither is better." They entered a massive building at the heart of the capital city. Inside was a chamber that reminded Takara painfully of the council chamber where humanity had been judged. "We modeled it deliberately," Elena admitted, "as a reminder of what was done to us and of why we must never do the same to others." The Dominion Council assembled to meet the delegation. It was larger than the Galactic Council, over 100 members representing different human factions, philosophical traditions, and temporal perspectives. "We have a proposal," said Councillor Marcus Liu V. He was impossibly old, over 400 years, kept alive by technology and periodic transitions to quantum form. "We call it the Eternal Accord." A hologram appeared showing the galaxy. The human dominion glowed in the Perseus arm. Council space filled the galactic core, and between them a web of connections began to form. "We propose a partnership," Marcus explained. "Not a government, not a merger. A voluntary association of species working toward a common goal, the preservation of all sapient achievement beyond the death of the universe." "The Eternity Project," Takara said. "Yes, we've made significant progress on our own, but we can't complete it alone. We need more perspectives, more knowledge, more consciousness. The archive must contain all of us, not just humanity. It must be truly universal." Another hologram appeared, showing a structure so vast it defied comprehension. It existed partially outside normal space-time, anchored in the eternal moment before creation and after ending. "The Universal Archive," Elena said. "We've been building it for 300 years. But it's only 10% complete. With council species participating, we could finish it in another 500 years. Without them, it might take 5,000. "And what do we get?" asked one of the other council delegates, a Thalrion named Julmar. "Besides the promise of immortality in an archive?" "Knowledge," said Shepherd Elena the Ninth, appearing suddenly among them. "We've spent 1,000 years studying architect technology. We've learned things the council never discovered. Medical advances, energy production, materials science, consciousness transfer, temporal mechanics. We'll share all of it. And safety," added Marcus. "We've been protecting council space for centuries, quietly, anonymously, preventing wars, averting disasters. Now we can do it openly. Temporal shepherds can see dangers coming and warn people. We can help, but not control," Elena the 22nd said firmly. "That's critical. We offer partnership, not domination. Each species remains sovereign. Each government stays independent. We're proposing cooperation, not absorption. The debate among the council delegates lasted for hours. Some were enthusiastic. Others were cautious. A few were outright hostile, seeing the offer as a trap. Takara watched and listened. Finally, she stood. My people voted against the exile 1,000 years ago, she said. We saw it as wrong then. We see it as wrong now. The question before us isn't whether to trust the humans. The question is whether we have the courage to move beyond our fear. They're not even fully human anymore, Julmar objected. They've become something else. So will we, Takara said. Eventually. The architects proved that any sufficiently advanced civilization will transcend. The humans simply got there first because we gave them the tools and the time. But we'll all reach that point eventually, or we'll stagnate and die. Better to reach it together. The vote was taken. 17 species agreed to join the Eternal Accord immediately. 23 chose to remain neutral, watching but not committing. 7 refused entirely, retreating deeper into traditional council space. 17 is enough to start, Elena the 22nd said. The others will come eventually, or they won't. That's their choice. The signing ceremony took place in the replica council chamber. Takara signed for her people, the first non-human species to join the Dominion's great work. Others followed, but the most moving moment came afterward, in a private ceremony that Takara attended by special invitation. There's someone who wants to meet you, Elena the 22nd said, leading Takara to a small room filled with eternity nodes. A figure materialized from one of the nodes. An elderly human woman with dark hair and brown eyes. She looked exactly like she did in the historical records from 1,000 years ago. I am Elena Vasquez, the figure said. Or rather, I'm a quantum copy of her consciousness, preserved in the lattice when she died 700 years ago. I've been waiting to meet someone from the council, to say the things I wanted to say at the trial but couldn't. Takara found herself unable to speak. I'm not angry, Elena Vasquez said gently. I thought I would be. I thought I'd rage against what was done to us. But I've had centuries to watch what we became. The exile was wrong, but it led us here, to this moment, to this partnership, and I can't bring myself to regret a path that ends so well. Your people suffered, Takara managed to say, because of decisions my ancestors supported. Yes, Elena agreed. But suffering often leads to growth. We were soft, comfortable when we lived in council space. The exile made us hard, made us innovative, made us reach further than we ever would have otherwise. The council feared our potential. By exiling us, they ensured that potential was fully realized. She smiled, the expression warm and sad and wise. Tell the council something for me, she said. Tell them that history doesn't judge individual decisions. It judges the arc of civilizations. The exile was unjust, but what came from it was miraculous. In the final accounting, I think the balance tips toward the miraculous. I will tell them, Takara promised. Good, Elena said. Now let me show you something wonderful. She led Takara to a viewing platform that looked out over New Hope. The sun was setting, painting the sky in colors that Earth had never seen. The 3 moons were rising and the ring system glittered overhead. We named this world New Hope deliberately, Elena explained. Because hope was all we had when we arrived. We were exiled, cut off, alone in the dark. But we chose to hope, to believe we could build something good, and we did. You built something extraordinary, Takara said. We built what we needed to survive, Elena corrected. The Eternity Project, the Temporal Dominion, all of it. It's just survival by another name. We're trying to ensure that consciousness persists, that meaning survives, that the universe's brief moment of awareness doesn't simply vanish when the stars go cold. The architects had the same goal. Yes, and they achieved it. They exist now in the eternal moment outside of time, observing everything and nothing simultaneously. We've communicated with them through the deep temporal layers of our nodes. They're waiting for us, for all of us. When the universe ends and the archive activates, we'll join them in that eternal moment. Every species, every consciousness, every story ever told. Takara felt tears forming again. It's too beautiful, too large. How do you live with such purpose? One day at a time, Elena said, laughing. Same as everyone. Yes, we're building something that will outlast time itself. But we're also just people living our lives, falling in love, raising children, making art, telling jokes. The cosmic purpose doesn't replace the daily meaning, it supplements it. Over the next weeks, the eternal accord took shape. 17 species sent representatives, scientists, artists, and philosophers. The Dominion shared its knowledge freely. Medical technology that extended lifespans. Energy systems that required no fuel. Materials that could repair themselves. Educational techniques that made learning faster and more efficient. In return, council species brought their own knowledge. Cultural traditions millions of years old. Alternative approaches to physics that humanity had never considered. Art forms that required senses humans didn't have. It was trade, but deeper than trade. It was the beginning of a true galactic civilization, united not by government but by shared purpose. The Eternity Project accelerated. With 17 species contributing, construction of the Universal Archive moved faster. The structure grew in its strange space outside time, fed by the consciousness and knowledge of billions. Shepherd Elena IX took Takara to see it, pulling her consciousness partially out of time so she could perceive what was being built. It was indescribable. The archive existed as a vast structure of crystallized consciousness and information. It contained libraries but also living memories. It held not just facts but experiences. When it was complete, anyone could access it and experience the life of someone who lived 1 billion years ago or 1 trillion years in the future. Every person who ever lived will be here, Elena IX explained, her voice coming from multiple time periods at once. Every thought, every dream, every moment of joy or sorrow. We're preserving not just knowledge but consciousness itself. When the universe ends, we'll all still exist here together forever. Won't it be crowded? Takara asked, trying to joke. Elena laughed. Time is infinite. Space is infinite. The archive exists across all of both. There's room for everyone who has ever existed or ever will exist. All of us together in the eternal moment. Takara felt the weight of it, the responsibility, the beauty. I want my people to be part of this. They already are, Elena said. Look. She showed Takara a section of the archive. It was filled with Velshura consciousness, Velshura memories, Velshura culture, millions of years of it preserved and honored. We've been recording council species for 1,000 years, Elena explained. Even before the accord, we wanted to make sure that if something happened to you, your story would survive. That's what the architects taught us. Preserve everything, leave nothing to the void. Years passed. The eternal accord grew stronger. More council species joined, seeing the benefits and overcoming their fears. Construction of the Universal Archive continued. The chronolattice expanded, nodes appearing throughout the galaxy, and in the Perseus arm on New Hope, in the chamber modeled after the council chamber that had condemned humanity, a ceremony took place. Ambassador Elena Chen Vasquez the 22nd stood where her ancestor had stood 1,000 years before. Around her were representatives from 42 species now. More had joined. Others would come. Today marks the 1,000th anniversary of humanity's exile, she said. 1,000 years ago, the council made a decision based on fear. They saw our potential and were frightened. They exiled us to the Perseus arm, expecting us to struggle and fade. She smiled. Instead, we built a civilization that time itself cannot erase. We followed the architect's path and became something permanent, something eternal. And now we offer that gift to all species, not as conquerors, not as saviors, as partners. She activated a hologram. It showed the galaxy, but not as it appeared now. It showed the galaxy as it would appear 1 trillion years in the future. The stars were dying. The galaxies were drifting apart. The universe was growing cold and dark. But throughout it all, glowing softly, were the eternity nodes, billions of them. And at the center, existing outside of time, was the Universal Archive. Still there, still preserving, still remembering. This is what we're building together, Elena said. A monument to consciousness itself. A testament that we were here, that we mattered, that we loved and created and struggled and triumphed. When the last star dies and the final particle decays, the archive will remain, and inside it will be all of us. Every species, every story, every moment of meaning. She paused, looking around at the assembled delegates. The council exiled humanity out of fear. But fear is just the shadow of potential. You were right to see our potential. You were wrong to fear it, because that potential, properly directed, could save not just humanity but all of us. All consciousness, all meaning forever. Today we complete the first phase of the Universal Archive. It is now capable of existing independently of normal spacetime. It cannot be destroyed because it exists outside of destruction. It will survive everything. She pressed a control. Throughout the galaxy, on every world that had joined the Accord, eternity nodes activated simultaneously. The chronolattice pulsed with power, and somewhere outside of time, the Universal Archive solidified into permanence. It is done, Elena said simply. We are preserved, now and forever. The chamber erupted in celebration. Species that had once feared each other now embraced. The age of isolation was over. The age of eternal partnership had begun. Takara found Elena afterward on a balcony overlooking the city. Your ancestor would be proud, Takara said. Elena smiled. She is proud. I spoke with her quantum self this morning. She said to tell you that she forgives the council. All of them. Even the ones who voted for exile. That's generous. That's human, Elena corrected. We're good at forgiveness. It's one of our better traits. They stood together, watching the city lights and the glowing nodes overhead. The sun was setting again, painting the sky in impossible colors. What happens now? Takara asked. Now? Elena considered. Now we live. We explore. We create. We love. We exist. The archive is complete enough to survive. The rest is just adding to it. We have trillions of years before the universe ends. That's enough time for everyone to live every possible life. Learn everything there is to know and create wonders we can't even imagine yet. And when the universe does end, we'll be waiting in the archive, Elena said. All of us together. And we'll witness the end not with fear but with curiosity. Because beyond the end, the architects say there's something else. Another universe, maybe. Another beginning. And we'll be there to see it. To record it. To preserve it. She turned to Takara, her eyes bright. The council tried to erase us. Instead, they made us eternal. That's the final irony. The final gift. By exiling us, they ensured that humanity would survive everything, even time itself. In the sky above, an eternity node activated. It was newly placed, one of billions. But this one was special. It appeared in the exact spot where the barrier had once stood. A marker, a reminder, a promise. The exile had ended. The age of eternity had begun, and in the temporal layers of the node, if you knew how to look, you could see echoes of the past. Ambassador Elena Vasquez standing in the council chamber, Marcus Chen commanding the Exodus fleet, Sarah Kim discovering the first architect data crystal, all of them preserved, all of them remembered. History will judge this decision, Elena Vasquez had said 1,000 years ago. History had judged, and the verdict was clear. The exile had been wrong, but what came from it was miraculous, and the miracle would last forever.